All right, so we just wrapped up day 3 of NGAUS. This is Golden Nugget Podcast, CGO Talk. Again, still just a working title. We'll see how it goes. So final day of the conference, final day of our company grade officer professional development. A lot to really get into. Today, we're joined by a couple people from before and a couple new people. So today we've got Lieutenant David Meekum from the 300th MI Brigade. We've got Captain George Eckersley from, I forget where you're...
Oh, I'm from the engineers, 204th.
Engineers, 204th Engineers. And again, we have back with us Lieutenant Jesse Call, and we have Lieutenant Joseph Lehman. So
glad to be back.
Perfect. So I wanted, for this one, I just want to jump right into it. Let's just talk about the CGO professional development to start off with. A lot to unpack there. I think, we talked a little bit yesterday about good content, bad delivery, maybe on the for a critique of yesterday's presenter from Ohio State University. But I think today, great content, great delivery, very engaging, a lot to talk about. And like I said, a lot to unpack. So key takeaways, what really stuck with all of you here, and let's have a discussion.
I personally liked how much of a discussion it was.
Yeah.
How many times he reverted to the audience looking for feedback and for their insights as to their experience with leadership, and then kind of giving us the leaded discussions to turn to our neighbor and just have more of that interaction and feedback one-on-one versus just listening to a lecture and a PowerPoint the whole time.
And the key topic here for him was essentially authentic leadership for team building.
Yep.
So Jesse, what do you think?
He talked a lot about how leadership has to start from the self-awareness, being conscious of how we're interacting with others. That leadership starts with relationships. And that was a pretty powerful concept, actually, to think that, and this is something that we're taught a lot and that we talk about a lot in leadership. But he really kind of harped on that today, is that we have to be able to self-evaluate, be capable of self-evaluation if we expect to be effective leaders. Really effective, I thought.
Dave.
Yeah, one of the things that I liked the most was in a lot of these leadership discussions, we talk a lot about theory and traits that good leaders have, traits that bad leaders have, but he actually went into things that we can start doing now, today, to make ourselves be more effective leaders. I came away with several things that I want to do better that I can start doing Wednesday morning when I get to work.
So like what?
One thing is, if I ask somebody how their day is, stay there and listen to the answer.
Yeah, so an interesting, that idea of being present, being present in those conversations. So, George, what about you? What did you take away?
So what I took away is that leadership is built over time. This is not something that you flip a switch on, become a leader immediately. Yeah. It's developed in the long term. It's the things that we do every day, how we talk to our coworkers, our peers, and our superiors. Just like it was saying that had that conversation, be in the moment, talk to someone, and ask them how they're doing, actually listen to how they're doing, and actually care about their responses. And that's that relationship you build over time that really helps solidify you as a leader with everyone you work with.
Yeah.
Yeah, that when he turned to that video of Simon Sinek, and how he kind of just spread it out as far as, you're not going to get this leadership engagement by just putting in 9 hours of this immersive transformation. You're going to do it by the small investments every day. And it's really parallel with the book Atomic Habits that I'm reading right now, which is just small investments every day, little differences, which is what you'll see the differences. He's talking about going to the gym, you work out, you look in the mirror, you don't see anything. You go to the gym again, work out, you don't see anything. And you don't know at what point, at what day, but you're going to see results. It's not that day, it's not the next day or the day after that, but after that long term, like George was saying, putting in that small investment every day and then seeing the results over time.
So was that Atomic Leadership?
Atomic Habits.
Atomic Habits.
Yep.
Okay.
I actually can't remember the author, but
Yeah, great book. Highly recommended. I've read it 3 or 4 times now, I think, that same one.
Yeah. One of the things that I thought was interesting, and obviously I stood up and brought it up and kind of had that discussion. Kind of expose, I guess, myself a little bit. Take a little bit of a risk, but he talked about the, leadership success when successful leaders derail. And so it wasn't just so much about, this is what authentic leadership looks like, but this is when authentic leadership can fall apart. And that really hit me really, really hard because, I've looked, obviously a couple of you that are here are direct reports to me on the full-time side. So this will go on your evaluation if you're not super nice to me.
This is why we're here for the podcast.
And your evaluations are due here
And this
soon.
is how it derails.
This is how it derails. So I'll go with what I just did right there, which is an insensitive and bullying style, which I'm now just guilty of. But the, I'll just read through these here real quick. But why successful leaders derail. And insensitive, abrasive, intimidating bullying styles, cold, aloof, arrogant, betrayal of personal trust, overly ambitious, self-centered, thinking of next job, political, specific performance problems with the business, over-managing, unable to delegate or build a team, unable to select good subordinates. And I don't know if this is necessarily, the slide might be poorly titled. It's not necessarily why successful leaders fail. It's what it looks like when successful leaders derail. And I look at that list and one thing is, it's like I've found myself as I get more senior, become a senior captain, more guilty of, like, some of these have resonated with me of, these, like, I've employed some of this style more often than I like. And so it's like, like I said in the room, I think every generation of company grade officers that have ever been have always said, I wish my leadership had this training.
Yeah.
But those that have that training eventually become those that other people say that about. And so it's this, this isn't a new thing where this idea of, I wish my leaders demonstrated this more so that I have a better conditions to be able to develop that. And so I'm really thinking a lot at this stage of my career of those forces and impacts, and really what is that culture that develops that kind of insensitive leadership that everybody in the room raised their hand and said they experienced.
That list of 7 that you just went through, that he went through on the slide, I think what was most impactful for me there was that all but maybe 1.5 of those, maybe not even a full one of those, were fully within the control of the leader. It was all about the leader's behavior rather than, organizational conditions, rather than, external factors, really. Now, if a company is failing, that may be due to external factors, but that's really the only thing there. Everything else is, how I interact with others is fully in my control. How I react to stress is fully within my control, right? And so I think that, and his response to your question, I thought was spot on, is that we have to be able to manage not just down, but up as well, right? And that's a tricky thing to do. And I know that I've fallen into the trap. I was thinking that the same thing. I've fallen into the trap that, this leader's saying this leader's saying that. It's frustrating. It's terrible for the culture. This is not the way we want to go, et cetera, et cetera. But really, I have to shift my own focus and be like, okay, how can I better support that so that the organization can move better, more effectively? How can I better support that leader rather than just pointing the finger? I need to look at those 7 things and think, you know what? These are all up to me. And that was, at least that's what I got out of his response to you, and that was pretty impactful.
This is dead air.
Yeah.
Go ahead, fill the void.
I felt the same way. So when I looked at that list of traits, I've seen myself do some of those things. And so I sat there for a little while afterwards asking myself why I behave in that way sometimes. And what came to my mind is whenever I'm in a situation that's high stress and there's not mutual trust. So mutual trust that I can trust my subordinates to accomplish my mission, Or if I don't feel that my leadership is trusting me to accomplish that mission, then I become a bully. And so I think that's the key thing that we need to have up and down is mutual trust, the principles of mission command, right? So that mutual trust and a shared understanding. And then, of course, competence, so that we understand that, I trust my subordinates and I know they're competent to accomplish. I'm competent myself. You have to be the first person to prepare yourself, and then trust in your leadership as well.
Yeah. You said kind of a key word there, and I don't know if you intended it, but it was like on the level of being self-aware, you said, trust my subordinates to accomplish my mission. That keyword my versus our, right? It's all the ownership is on the team, and just kind of being aware of because we all have biases, and if we're aware of them, or where, like you said, or we're just that self-awareness of being able to look internally, and that's where the intelligence comes in, is just knowing and being able to identify those areas where I need to improve. And for me, empathy has been a hard one. Just like, I'm not naturally wired to be very empathetic, but I know that, and so I purposely have to find ways to be empathetic, especially when people are going through hard times or dealing with personal issues. I have to work very hard at making sure that they feel understood by me, and that I can be human to them in those times, because I'm a firm believer that people don't show up to work wanting to be subpar or subgrade. Most people want to rise up to the task and be successful, and so when they're not, looking for those obstacles that are in their life that are keeping from being that way, and helping them remove them versus making them feel bad about it.
Yeah, and it for me, it continues to come back. First, that's clear my throat, number one, right there. Number two, all right. No, for me, it comes back to this idea of pressure, and going back to his answer on that too. Is it's I think anybody in those positions wants to be empathetic, may not have the skills, but wants to do good, wants to lead the team, wants to be a good leader that people look up to. It's what are the pressures that are put on there? And this idea that he came up with, where he mentioned too, the average lifespan of a CEO is 11 months, whereas before it was years, if not decades. And
that was nuts.
Yeah, but that's the world we all live in, right? What's the average? What's the term of command? 18 months.
18
You're in
months to 2
command.
years.
You're 18 months. You're guaranteed at least 18 months. If you're anything less than 18 months, you were a dirtbag.
Something happened.
Something happened. So
Yeah.
it's 18 months to 2 years, 3 years if you're absolutely lucky and there's nobody behind you that needs the opportunity. But that's a lot of pressure, like especially for a National Guardsman. Like essentially that 2 year, 18 months, 2 years. Really, we're talking about 50 days, 50
Yeah.
actual days
For a
of
DSG.
FaceTime with your soldiers. And you have to have something that goes on an OER, like, because heaven forbid you get a 2 years in a row of of a highly qualified instead of a most qualified, and you don't get that excels. Like, there's a lot of pressure to make something happen.
And the organization is accustomed to going through leaders that quickly, right? And so to be able to, knowing that the organization is going to have new leadership in 24 months, and to be able to bring them through the change that you want to be able to see, the change that you wanted to see in the organization when you were looking at previous commanders that you had, that's a heavy responsibility. And the subordinates know it too. Sometimes people just wait, we can just put up with this for another 40 work days until the next commander comes in. Right?
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of there's a lot to that of the criticisms of officers put in those positions are you see a change and it's like, oh, somebody got their OER, their OER bullet right there. And it can be very disruptive, and there's that interpersonal piece that's lacking. So it's like, how do you do what he was talking about during that, as far as authentic leadership in a organization that is time limited and objectives focused? I'm sure we have the answer here, right? Like, That was like the easiest question. That was a softball.
So
just kidding.
he used the word. The root was relation, right? What was the full word that he's relational leadership? As I think the word he used on his last slide.
Yeah.
And in big red letters, relational leadership, I think is how he phrased it.
So I'll just real quick for that. So he presented a new definition. And
Right,
really
yeah.
it was sourced from I'm going to butcher the last name here, Suzanne Comives, 1998. A relational process of people coming together to accomplish social change.
Right.
So a definition of leadership.
And I think that he asked in the training, why relational leadership? And for me, I thought about this for a while afterwards. It comes down to relationships. It comes down to how we interact with those we're asked to lead, those are our peers, with our own leadership, right? It comes down to those relationships. If we get those relationships right, if we treat people as human beings, if we treat people with the respect that they deserve, then the organization can move forward. Without those relationships, or ignoring those relationships, or getting those relationships wrong, can be devastating and have repercussions well beyond. I know of an organization that 2 commanders later was still suffering from poor relationship management of a particular commander, and it can take a while to recover from that.
Yeah. And to be honest, I was guilty. When you asked the question, I was thinking about the importance of being present, but I wasn't being present when you were asking the question. So when you looked at me for an answer, I was like, what did he just ask me? I was thinking about being present, and I wasn't being present. Cause
Yeah, it's easy. It's
George,
easy. Yeah.
He put up that slide about, what was it, 9 different kind of characteristics of what would you focus on tomorrow?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And when George and I talked about it, I put in my 2 cents. George, maybe you can chime in on yours, but I think mine was being present. Because if you are, then the other things will take care of themselves. One of them was a sense of humor. And I was like, if you're focused on having a sense of humor, you're probably going to be waiting for that time you can put that joke in you've been thinking about all day and guiding the discussion for your punchline versus actually listening to the questions.
I'm
being
guilty of
asked
that.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah. What did you think, Georgia, when it came to those 9? What did they say? Competencies or?
I can't remember what.
I'll find that.
Leadership
But traits for authentic leadership.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mine was just fall in line as well as just being present in the moment.
So
Yeah.
capacities. Sorry, it's capacities. So being
Yeah,
being
leadership.
present. Anybody else? Anything different on that?
Do you remember the 9? Do you have them there?
Yeah. So
Can
I'll
you
read.
jog my memory?
I'll read through these real quick. So we had being present, suspension and letting go, intention aligned with higher purpose,
Oh, that's the one.
whole system awareness, compassion, whole self-awareness, personal power, dealing with dualities and paradoxes, and sense of humor. So you're saying, George, you're saying intention aligned with higher purpose was the one that stood out to you?
That's correct. Yeah, that's when we first read them off. I read them briefly, and I landed onto that one because thinking aligning your priorities with your higher leadership's goals. So it's like the TAG's priorities, aligning your goals with the TAG's goals as well. But then we started talking about it that we decided to land on being present in the moment is really takes precedence over everything else. Everything else will just fall in line. But for now, just be in the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the question that was around that is I think it was something along the lines of what one would you work on now or something along those lines.
Yeah.
What did he ask?
Yeah. What one would you work on tomorrow? I think is how he phrased it. Something along those. Something
Gotcha.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, all of these obviously they're capacities, right? They're things that need to happen, and they need to happen in the moment that they're needed, I guess.
Right.
Also,
Go ahead, George.
being present in the moment also was he's also into under your task, right? Instead of multitasking, doing 12 different things at once, just do one thing at a time.
Yeah.
Yeah, not answering emails during a meeting.
Yeah, and having your computer during a meeting is very disrespectful, in my opinion. Then when you also trying to answer emails while someone's trying to talk to you, they come to your office and you're just like, well, let me type up this email. It's also kind of disrespectful.
I don't do that, right, Jesse?
No,
Dave, I don't do
no.
that.
So that's
I do that.
That's a tough thing because, I mean, Miko and I joke that I swear when the first one of us to move on from the positions we are, I'm going to buy Dave a name tape that says "Got a minute" in place of his name because it's a tough thing to when all day long it's, "Hey LT, you got a minute?" And it's really tough. That is for me personally. I never in my career did I think, or never before did I think that I would have an issue with that. With I know I need to talk to you. I need to listen to you right now. We need to talk about what's going on. But I've got to get this out right now. And so having that, balancing those two things on a minute to minute basis is tough.
That's probably one that I'm most guilty of. And I'll use it strategically, like I'll intentionally, because there's certain personalities that I know if I engage with them, it's going to be a 30, 40 minute conversation, and it unfortunately won't be a productive one. Like it's not based on what I'm trying to get done that day, even though I need to be there as a human being for him. So I'll start typing on the keyboard.
This is
like,
my
hey,
nice way of saying it's time for you to go.
Right. So that's a fine balance. Like I've got to be better at being human and being there in the moment and finding ways to otherwise send the message. Look, I've got to redirect my focus or time right now.
That kind of, so for me, maybe this kind of just speaks to where my headspace is at personally, but both of the briefings in the CGO development, what I most got out of them was the talk about self-awareness, being cognizant of where my own needs are, what my own strengths and weaknesses are, what my own biases are, right? And that's that kind of introspection I don't think comes naturally, at least not to most people. It doesn't to me. But that's where, like you were just saying, you recognize, hey, I have an issue with this. That's a tough thing to do. And leadership, at least for me, that is a tough thing to do.
One of the things I thought about is I've also identified those weaknesses in myself. And it reminded me of one of our former full-time officers in charge, Major Tim Kelly. He published, a lot of leaders will put out their leadership philosophy or whatever. He published a user guide.
Yeah, I remember.
And it was really
that.
great because he goes through there and he says, hey, look, I have been accused of having a resting mad face. Like, I'm not mad. And he talks about how to approach him and the issues that he has. He wants to be open, but he understands that he's weak in some areas. And so it's good idea, probably for me, something I would like to do is say, hey, I want to be compassionate. Yeah. If I'm writing an email, you might have to tap my shoulder because I can't pay attention to two things at once. That's one of the areas that I'm really weak at. Yeah,
no, that was something really interesting because I remember when he published that, and that was something that, I've kind of been working on mine for a while now. And it's always, there's always something else to add, but you have to make it digestible, right? That you hand it to
accessible. Yeah.
And accessible. And I remember talking to several people, and they really hated that. Like they hated that. Like they saw that, and it going to kind of Eric's point from yesterday, is that type of kind of vulnerability was seen as weakness.
Yeah.
Like the fact that the leader should know how to adapt to any personality, to any type. Like this shouldn't be a thing. Like there shouldn't be here, I'm going to train you on how to approach me. And I'm like, and I talk to them about that. And I'm like, no, this thing is like awesome.
Yeah.
Because I know if I need a decision made, if I need something from him, I know exactly how to approach him. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to be thrown off by little quirks that he has because he's given me basically a definition of what those things mean. I don't have to misinterpret when he's kind of just staring at me and looks like he's pissed off. Yeah. Like I know he's not pissed off. That's just his resting mad face.
Well, and he stuck to that too.
Yeah.
Like that, it was accurate. And I don't know if it was accurate because it was a genuine reflection of his personality, which I think it was. But I think a part of that was also, hey, this is what I am committing to by publishing this. This is what I am committing to. This is how, if people interact with me this way, I need to make myself available on these terms. And it was very effective.
This is how we can all be successful.
No, it was great. It was great.
One of my ex-bosses, brigade commander, I need him to sign a document for me. I sent it to him, and I waited for like a week and a half. And after 2 weeks, I talked to him again, and he just talked to me. He's like, "Hey, if you hear nothing from me within 2 days, let me know again. That's just how I operate." And from there on, if I knew from that point on, if I don't have anything back from him from 2 days, that's when I follow up, and that's my sweet spot. So I think it just does everyone a service, and this is how I operate. If you see something else, something's wrong, and we can readdress this.
Take
So I
all
really
the
think that's
guesswork out of it.
Yeah.
Because that's
Yeah,
the most
exactly.
frustration part of relationships is that's how frustration occurs, is unmet expectations. If you can define what the expectations will be when you're dealing or interacting with me, we should eliminate and minimize a lot of frustrations.
And it's a major shortcut, right? So by publishing those, he just cut out probably 6 months of getting to know you. This is how we're going to get along. Trial and error type. I'm going to bring you this memo, and I don't. I have no idea how you're going to react to it, but now I know. And so he cut out, like I said, probably 6 or 8 months of that.
Very easy. That was very easy to slide into that position, having never worked for him before.
Yeah.
No, that was exceptionally easy. Obviously, there's a lot here from OSU. Again, a very fantastic, a lot to unpack. Like I said, you could probably do a whole series of brown bags and OPDs just based off of individual slides there alone. So I don't think we've heard I don't think we've heard the last on this podcast of that content. But we're already pretty far into this, and we're all obviously all here dressed in our Real Salt Lake gear and getting ready to go to the state's dinner tailgate party this evening.
I want to put one short plug in for
absolutely
for this for that part of the session. What I did find ironic and kind of a shortfall for the content, if you will, was it was authentic leadership and team building. I didn't get a lot of content on the team building side of it, and that's kind of why I made that suggestion of, hey, next year maybe for the mixer or for part of the OPD, conduct a team building activity. Let us feel and see what that looks like, and then teach us on various levels, if depending on the size of our teams, how we can perform team building activities with our units. And I was kind of surprised we didn't get more of that.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot there, but I will say that next year in Reno, we're gonna have probably a lot of that and something more, because getting into the last part of the day, we had General Barry from the tag of the Nevada National Guard, and what a way to end the symposium.
Yeah.
So thoughts about General Barry and his send us home, send us through the brick wall and out of this conference and ready for next year. If
the Reno conference next year was nothing but 4 days of him talking, I think that would be pretty awesome. He may be the most engaging speaker in a uniform I have ever heard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll shut up now, but big fan.
But so as far as, obviously, kind of the reverse thing of, content or delivery was great, but let's talk about the content. Like what did he bring out? What did he bring up? What were some of your takeaways from what he really had to say to us this afternoon?
Know thyself. His first slide or second slide, I think, and I took pictures of all of his slides, I think, but managing the book on you, and it comes back to that kind of introspection. He talked a lot about self-leadership, that if we can't lead ourselves, if we don't know the direction that we're going and know what we need individually to go that direction, we're going to be completely lost trying to lead others. And great content.
Yeah, the takeaway I had, and he didn't actually say the word ownership, but a lot of what he talked about, that's what resonated with me, is take ownership for these things. Like, he brought up a lot of times, you haven't read this book, you should read this book, you should do these things. I felt a little bit inadequate. I was, there's so many more things that I need to be doing to be a better leader, and take ownership for those things. I think he said, don't be that person that sits there and says, I would do better, my organization would be better if I had better leadership. Mm-hmm. You be that agent of change. Take ownership for those things and change what you can control.
Yeah. He said, don't let anyone else define, don't let anyone you work with determine how you feel about life.
Or specifically, I think he said your career.
Yeah, your career.
Yeah, don't let anybody else define how you feel about your career.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was soul changing stuff.
Well, and such a simple concept, but it's not obvious all the time. I mean, a lot of the times, I know for myself, we just kind of go through life doing the best we can without that kind of deliberate, this is the kind of person that I need to be. And he really hit that home, that we have to define ourselves before we let somebody else define us for us. I'm not saying that very well, but hopefully that came across.
George, did you have anything?
When he was talking about the managing the book on yourself, a few of the statements came out that really resonated with me is how do I respond to stress? And I think that's plays into knowing yourself and knowing your weaknesses, which I don't know if it was done on purpose, but it seemed like both sessions today kind of had an underlying meaning. I don't know if you scheduled it that way, but just knowing yourself, knowing your biases, and then
I'll take credit for that. That's fine.
Yeah, that was amazing.
You just invited him to talk about whatever, right?
Yeah,
and
he was just like, General Barry? Yeah, we'll just put him on last. But yeah, no, I think the theming came together really well on that for sure.
Yeah, and I just wrote down I think we should emphasize the 3 points that he wanted us to take away, and that was coach, mentor, and role model. He definitely emphasized us, encouraged us, especially those of us who haven't at this point in this conference, to go and find a role model, go find somebody and ask them. And he even emphasized somebody you don't know. It doesn't have to be in your AFSC, doesn't have to be in your MOS. Find somebody you don't know that's been on your trail before, and ask them, will you help me grow? Can I ask you questions? Can I go to you to bounce things off of in the future? And secondly, courage, right? Have the difference between courage and bravery, where bravery is often found in the moment, where courage is a reflection of your being, yourself, and that self-mastery, and just be willing to do the right thing as often as possible, right? Being consistent and doing the right thing, and then drive, having that drive and that motivation, which was autonomy, mastery, and purpose. You know, those 3 points under drive, just being able to master yourself, have a purpose, and get to the point where it's automatic.
Yeah, absolutely.
He got into the etymology a little bit of courage, which I hadn't thought through fully. That the heart of it is the Latin word for heart. Mm-hmm. Unintended pun there. But in order for us to have courage, it has to come from within us. It's a trait, not an event.
Right.
And I forget, I didn't take a picture of that slide. I forget how he phrased the full definition there, but that was his difference between courage and bravery, like you said. Bravery, you may not even have to think about it because the adrenaline's just flowing. Courage is who you are.
What was that?
So I recorded him
Okay.
right when he was getting on fire there. You know.
Hey, let's play it.
So
let's
we'll see
yeah.
how well this comes through. But this is
Yeah.
like just kind of a lead up to this. This is General Barry's probably concluding 5 minutes where, I mean, if you were in church, this is where the Holy Ghost came in and touched on everybody. So
I think I counted 5 biblical references.
Heart touched by fire.
yeah,
Here we go.
So here we go. Let's see how well this comes through in the mic.
And do the things it takes to build you. Don't let anybody hold you back. This is your time. This is your season. You have to be committed. Who's with me right now? You have to be committed. You have to be ready to step up. You have to be ready to step up. You have to be ready to go. About the future of our organization. I'm so fired up about the guard. I tell this to the total force all the time. I go to the active duty. I say, y'all get to do this all the time. My 3/4 of my people ain't even here. They still kick your ass all the time.
He got carried away, lost his microphone.
Lost his microphone. Yeah.
So that was, just kind of him getting all riled up. So a little taste for those that might be considering coming to next year's conference, what you're in for.
Yeah, and for us, in Utah, it's a party bus trip away. We get a couple buses and take a lot out. So that's for those listening, that was General Barry, the tag of the Nevada National Guard, who is responsible for planning the next conference in Reno, Nevada. I think it's going to be fantastic. That pretty much almost does it for us. But any last parting thoughts? Just the experience overall. What do you guys think this weekend what has this meant? What has this meant for you? And what's one thing that you're going to take away and start doing based off your experiences this weekend? And we'll start, Dave.
So takeaway, definitely going to start doing some of those traits that you can do right away to become a better leader, right? Overall experience for this weekend, I've really enjoyed the accessibility to the senior leadership.
Yeah,
So
you partied with the CNGB last night.
Yeah, that was awesome.
But I feel like there's so much information coming at us at all times. Like, I get emails from my first sergeant, new ACFT guidance, this new policy letter. To sit there and listen to General Jensen talk about readiness and strength and hear his priorities coming from his mouth right there in that room.
It's a different experience.
It's different. Now I want to go home and I want to recruit, because he said unit readiness is equals to end strength. And so just hearing that priorities and that accessibility to those senior leaders is really what's made this weekend great for me.
Awesome. George.
What I really enjoy about the course, about this whole weekend, is just like we talked about, accessibility to leadership. When we get briefed from the 3 stars, 4 stars, Chief of National Guard Bureau, you don't really get that. It's just a really different experience to see them in person and hear their priorities, just like you said. One of the chief of the National Guard was talking about how he was about the USR and how it all flows up to him. He wants to be truthful how the organization sits. We always talk about being truthful on the USR, not too inflated, but hear it just from the general's mouth. You're like, yes, because he's actually looking at those and making decisions based off what we're telling him.
Yeah, those numbers matter. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw Lehman under the bus just a little bit. So in the air breakout session this morning, and this speaks to exactly what you guys were just talking about, the accessibility. I don't know, at least in my point in my career, there's not another venue where I really have the ability to have that kind of accessibility to senior leadership at all. To have that kind of direct, frank Q&A is really rewarding. So this morning, General Lowe, who is the director of the Air National Guard, he opened it up for Q&A, and Lehman this morning he asked specifically about new hangars. How do we get bigger new hangars? And General Lowe's response wasn't. I think it was probably not exactly what you were hoping for, what you were looking for. But what he did do is he pointed you in the direction of 2 other people in the room who definitely could answer and help with that question. Yeah. And I was standing right there when you were able to network with 2 or 3 people from other states that had successfully bridged that gap or are working on bridging that gap.
Just by asking the question.
So General Lowe invited the question. He facilitated the discussion. And I mean, obviously it's really, really early to tell what may come of that, but there's not another venue that us as lieutenants will be able to have that kind of a access, understanding. Yeah, fascinating, very rewarding for me, the whole conference.
Yeah,
Joe.
I'll tag on that a little bit because I was going to bring that up too. Is that
you stole his thunder?
No, it's perfect. It's a perfect segue because I want to add a little bit to it. That sitting at my desk as the deputy base civil engineer at the Air Guard, you see certain things going into place and certain things restricted by the AFI or by policy, etc. And you're thinking, man, I've got to build hangars, or I got to design hangars for the KC-135. So before I asked my question, Mike Lowe kind of led me into this question. General Mike Lowe.
You buddy
right,
now.
Homie.
Did you party with him last night?
I mean, he gave me that nod today, like we're homeboys now. So if he's hearing it, I'm sure he'd agree. But he basically called out Salt Lake City in his address before I had even said anything. The efforts we're making with the KC-135 and joint with the Army, Operation Thanos, doing some awesome stuff there. And he basically called us out for it. We're going to be building new hangars. I don't want you to build them for a specific aircraft. I want you to build hangars for large mobility aircraft. We've been flying the KC-135 for the last 60 years. We're not going to be flying it for another 60. He's like, I hope not. Right? It's
we probably will.
Right.
We probably will be.
So I stood up and then followed up with the question of, sir, how do I get NGB to approve funds beyond what my current requirements are? And then that's when he kind of looked at his A47 like, hey, you got to help Salt Lake City out. So I might have put undue pressure on his 1-star A47 for providing solutions, but I was able to talk to him, get the clarity I needed as far as making that happen. But it all boils back to a couple of addresses that really stood out to me was that when we went to the air session specifically with General Lowe, but then also General Brown, where he was basically talking about accelerating change or lose, move until apprehended.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what I'm going to go back and do, and is just kind of push those boundaries appropriately. But we're really looking to pace with China, doing things that ways we've never done before, and getting past the bureaucracy and getting past the delays of moving at government's pace. Right. So we're going to find ways to move until we're apprehended and told we screwed up, and then we'll fix it.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah, I
go to
like that.
jail.
I like that. The proceed till apprehended.
Yep.
Use at your own risk.
Right. Exactly. And which is what we're paid as officers to do, is to operate in that gray area, right? To assume certain risks and to accept them where it's appropriate.
Yeah, and that was probably one big takeaway. There was an awful lot of that this weekend, of basically challenging company grade officers to, to do the Mahatma Gandhi, to be the change that you wish to see, and to have the courage to do that again in appropriate ways, with respect, respect, courage,
Professionalism.
loyalty, integrity,
Lead up.
but to not allow others to dictate how you feel about your career, and to really, really own and love what it means to be a member of the National Guard. So thank you all for joining us, and thank you for those listening. Reno, Nevada, 2023. I think it's going to be, a
gonna
lot of
be a
fun.
hoot.
Yeah.
It's going to be a lot of fun now that we're back to doing these in person after COVID.
Get ready to come to military church.
Military church, yeah,
Preached by General Barry.
absolutely. Thank you all. We're going to head out now to the state's dinner, the final event before we head back to Salt Lake City, and look forward to continuing these discussions within our formations when we return.
Thank
All
you.
right.